give back to the community for, in this case, the care of the dairy and providing of the milk and the products that we provide. And then my house has a budget, and I have to be responsible for that budget that we set every year. But it's not in any way connected to what work I do in the community per se. I also have a family with 5 children and my wife, and so all of our basic needs are provided in that way. You know, and there are always different kinds of nuances to that, of course, in terms of what about health care. We don't have our own car, but there's a car that's connected to the house, and we can borrow other cars as needed, or they borrow the car that's connected to the house. As far as retirement goes, you know, we could go into what that looked like. College education for the children, that's not provided by the community at this point. But I feel like really it's a wonderful life for my family and for myself, that the community is able to provide and finance. And it's amazing how the synergy of those people working together just for the good of the community actually, you know, every year we wonder at the beginning of the budget year if we're going to meet our budgetary needs, and then it always does work out. And so that's quite a blessing.
Great.
So each house is responsible for X number of mentally challenged individuals? Is that how it works?
There's not a specified number for each house, but most of our houses are large extended family type houses that have between 9 and 12 people living in the house, and usually 3 or 4 of those folks have developmental disabilities. Yeah.
And the household is responsible for their well-being.
That's right.
So it's double challenge. Your work and taking care of them.
That's right. Now, in connection with my living situation in farmhouse, partly because of the number of children that I have, and because of work situation that I have, it's, you know, really drawing on my time to a very considerable degree, and my wife Veronica is involved in central administration in the community. So there's only one person with developmental disabilities that's connected to us directly in farmhouse, living with us.
Sorry to interrupt, but you want to go back to your plant life?
Well, I probably, move a little quickly. I do want to leave time for questions at the end. But just also then to bring it down to the earthly aspect of the soils that we have there. We're in a part of the world that was originally probably all chestnut forest. And then when the first European settlers came in, and the Lenape people who were living there gradually moved westward, they cut down a lot of that forest, of course, and cleared it for the purpose of farming. And the original farming that happened there was to grow wheat in particular, as well as some other crops. And as I mentioned before, that kind of farming was not very suitable to the terrain of that area. And so some of our soils over time have been thinned down, especially on the top of the hills. And then there's some of the bottomlands that are quite rich in good topsoil. But through the grass-based farming that we do now, there's the possibility of rebuilding those soils. A lot of it is based on limestone type soils, which have the possibility of being really good, rich soils. So again, I feel like as far as the land that we have there, we're really blessed with a resource of good land, of really good water, and the aquifer underneath. So it's a very beautiful part of the world, I think. Any questions about the basic farm and community and the way that looks before I go on?
I would just ask, could you give, or maybe you're going to cover this a little bit later, but just kind of the cycle of biodynamics and what that, the theory of how the cycle works. I mean, do you understand what I'm asking?
Well, could you say a little more about the cycle aspect of it?
Well, just how biodynamics works. I mean, how is it different from just organic farming? straight up in the
It's
time.
exactly where I was going next.
I have a question about weeds you don't want. What are they, and how do you get rid of them, or how do you deal with them? Because I haven't heard you mention yet. Say, oh, we have such and such a weed that really messes up the milk, and we have to get rid of it. So and so.
There are a few such weeds. One is horse nettle,
Horse nettle.
which I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a plant that's related to the belladonna family and has this little fruit on it that looks kind of orangish red, a little bit like a tomato, which actually is also in that family of plants. It doesn't affect the milk negatively per se, but it can become very dominant in a pasture. The cattle don't eat it because it has thorns in it and doesn't taste good. The only way to really, well, there are a couple of things. One is that we do clip our pastures periodically because that will help to, first of all, vitalize some of the plants that are there to really grow back more vigorously. But it also, there are certain plants like horse nettle that if they're clipped regularly like that, they won't come back with the same kind of vitality. So that's the main thing that we do. The other thing is that, for example, in the field that you have been camping in at times, that has a lot of horse nettle in, and this year we chose to till that field, turn the earth over to actually free it from the horse nettle infestation, and then we'll replant it with plants that are better suited to what we're trying to do there. So yeah, but we never use any chemicals in terms of fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides.
Could you give us an idea of how many camp hills are there, maybe in the States or in the world, or how many people overall are participating in this societal transformation?
Yeah, Camp Hill is a worldwide movement that mainly works with people with developmental disabilities, though not only, and always in community settings, and usually also including land work, although, again, there are exceptions to that. And right now there are some 120 Camp Hill communities worldwide. They started in Scotland as a movement by Carl Koenig and others in 1939. Whole story behind that I can't go into now. But since then, there are a lot of those communities in Scotland and England and Ireland, but there are also some in Africa, and basically all 6 continents except Antarctica have at least one Camp Hill place.
Where in Latin America?
Excuse me?
Where in Latin America?
In Latin America, the only one that I know of is in Brazil. And I'm not sure exactly where in Brazil. It's a more rural area. Same question. So,
How many people overall?
so altogether, living in those Camp Hill communities worldwide, I wouldn't give an exact estimate, but I would say probably around 10 to 15,000 people.
Really?
So, going into the, yes?
Do you know if the camps are run a little different just because of cultural differences or run because of terrain differences?
If what's run differently?
The camps themselves, if they're run differently?
The Camp Hill villages?
Yes, Camp Hill villages, yeah, communities.
There are some basic, what are called essentials of Camp Hill, one of which is this principle that every individual has a spiritual core that one needs to respect and help to develop. Another one is what is called the Bible evening, which means that there's an opportunity in the week for everyone to share in an equal way what's gone on in their lives, and it creates a very important listening space for every person to be heard, and that we consider actually the key of our social political life, you could say.